There are prayers that leave the tongue and disappear into silence. Then there are prayers that continue traveling long after the words have ended. Many people imagine that Allah's response begins when circumstances change. Ibn Arabi taught that the response often begins much earlier. A door opens within the heart before it opens in the world. A hidden mercy starts moving before the eyes can see it. A soul is drawn closer before it understands why. The tragedy is not that Allah remains silent. The tragedy is that most people do not recognize the signs of His nearness when they appear. What if your dua has already been heard? What if the answer is already unfolding around you? Tonight, we uncover 5 profound signs that reveal when Allah is listening to your prayer and guiding your soul through the unseen. The prayer begins changing you before it changes your situation. Imagine that the answer to a prayer begins at the moment circumstances start moving in a favorable direction. They wait for visible proof. They look for opportunities, solutions, and outcomes. They search for changes in the world around them, believing that this is where the response will first appear. Yet the deeper wisdom spoken of by Ibn Arabi points towards something far more subtle. The response to a sincere dua often begins in a place that cannot be measured by events. It begins within the person who is praying. There are moments when someone raises their hands to Allah asking for relief, guidance, provision, healing, or understanding. Days pass, and outwardly nothing seems different. The same challenges remain. The same questions remain unanswered. The same difficulties continue standing before them. Yet beneath the surface, an invisible movement has already begun. The person who once felt consumed by panic finds that their fear no longer controls them in the same way. The person who was desperate for immediate answers discovers a new capacity for patience. The person who felt trapped within confusion begins seeing their situation through a different lens. The circumstances may appear unchanged, but the heart is no longer standing in the same place. Ibn Arabi understood that Allah's response is not limited to changing conditions. Sometimes the greater miracle is the transformation of perception itself. A person may spend years asking Allah to remove a burden, only to discover that the first response arrives as a deeper strength to carry what once seemed impossible. They may ask for certainty and receive a quieter heart. They may ask for a door to open and receive wisdom that reveals which doors should never have been entered. This is because the purpose of dua is not merely to obtain what is desired. It is also to bring the servant into a closer relationship with the one being asked. As the prayer continues, something begins shifting within the soul. The person becomes more aware of Allah's presence, more attentive to their inner state, and more capable of recognizing meanings they previously overlooked. There are times when a person finishes making dua and feels an unexpected softness within their heart. The problem has not disappeared, yet the relationship to the problem has changed. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable. What once felt meaningless begins carrying lessons. What once felt like abandonment begins revealing traces of divine care hidden within the experience. The world often teaches people to measure answers by results alone. Spiritual wisdom teaches that answers sometimes arrive first as transformation. Before Allah changes the path beneath your feet, He may change the way you walk. Before He changes what surrounds you, He may change what lives within you. Before He grants what you seek, He may prepare you to receive it. This preparation is easy to overlook because it happens quietly. No announcement is made, no dramatic sign appears. Yet the soul gradually becomes different. The prayer you thought was traveling toward Allah begins returning to you in the form of patience, clarity, trust, humility, and deeper awareness. When this happens, the doer is already working. The response has already begun, not because the situation has changed, but because the person standing within that situation is no longer the same person who first made the prayer, and sometimes that hidden transformation is the earliest sign that Allah has already heard every word. When unexpected peace arrives without an explanation, there are moments in a person's life when the outer circumstances provide no reason for comfort, yet a strange calmness begins settling into the heart. The problem remains unsolved, the future remains uncertain, the answer being sought has not yet appeared. From every visible perspective, worry should still be present. Yet something unexpected happens after sincere prayer. The storm continues around the person, but its grip upon the heart begins to loosen. This kind of peace is different from the peace that comes when difficulties finally disappear. It does not depend upon favorable news, improved conditions, or the arrival of what was requested. It appears before any of those things. It enters quietly, without announcing itself, and often leaves the person wondering where it came from. Ibn Arabi taught that Allah's mercy does not always arrive in the form people expect. Human beings often ask for a change in circumstances because they believe that is the source of their discomfort. Yet there are times when Allah sends tranquility before sending solutions. The soul receives reassurance before it receives results. A hidden stillness begins spreading through the heart, long before the situation itself has changed. The person may notice that their constant need to predict every outcome begins fading. Questions that once produced anxiety no longer carry the same weight. The future remains unknown, yet it no longer feels threatening in the same way. There is a growing sense that the matter has been placed into hands greater than their own. What makes this experience so remarkable is that it cannot be manufactured through effort alone. It arrives unexpectedly. A person may spend weeks feeling overwhelmed by uncertainty, then suddenly discover that the burden feels lighter despite no visible improvement in their situation. The heart becomes less occupied with fear and more receptive to trust. This transformation often reveals something important about the nature of dua. Prayer is not merely a request for intervention. It is also an act of returning. Every sincere dua turns the heart toward Allah, and in that turning, something begins changing. The person who repeatedly places their concerns before Allah gradually discovers that they do not have to carry those concerns alone. There is a form of knowledge that belongs to the intellect and another that belongs to the heart. The intellect seeks explanations. It wants evidence, certainty, and clear reasons. The heart, however, sometimes receives reassurance before explanation arrives. It becomes calm without being able to justify its calmness. It rests without fully understanding why. Ibn Arabi often spoke about the unseen realities operating beneath visible events. Not everything Allah is doing can be immediately observed. Not every movement of mercy can be measured by outward circumstances. Sometimes the first indication that a prayer has been heard is not a change in the world but a change in the atmosphere of the soul. The person who once felt restless begins experiencing moments of stillness. The person who was consumed by fear finds unexpected space within themselves. The person who felt abandoned begins sensing a quiet nearness they cannot fully describe. This peace does not mean the journey is over. It does not guarantee that every difficulty will disappear immediately. What it offers is something equally precious. It allows the heart to continue walking without being crushed by uncertainty. It provides strength before answers arrive and trust before outcomes become visible. It often carries a subtle message. It reminds the soul that Allah's response is not limited to changing external realities. Sometimes His response begins by changing the condition of the heart itself. The calmness that arrives without explanation may be more than a passing feeling. It may be a sign that the prayer has already reached its destination and that divine mercy is already moving through unseen pathways, long before the eyes are able to witness the result. The doors that close after you pray. There are times when a person raises their hands to Allah with a sincere request, expecting movement in a particular direction, only to discover that the opposite begins happening. Opportunities disappear, plans become difficult to pursue, conversations that once seemed promising suddenly come to an end, paths that appeared open begin narrowing without explanation. The immediate reaction is often disappointment, because the human heart, naturally, associates an answer with expansion rather than restriction. It expects doors to open, not close. Yet Ibn Arabi often pointed toward a deeper understanding of divine wisdom, one that cannot always be measured by immediate outcomes. Human beings see possibilities and become attached to them because they appear beneficial from a limited perspective. Allah sees not only where a path begins but where it leads. What appears attractive to the servant may contain burdens hidden beyond the horizon of present awareness. What appears to be a setback may be protecting the soul from a destination it was never meant to reach. After making dua, some people notice a series of closures taking place around them. The project they wanted does not move forward. The relationship they hoped would continue begins fading. The opportunity they worked so hard to secure slips away despite every effort. At first, these moments can feel confusing because they seem disconnected from the prayer itself. The person asked for guidance or blessing, yet circumstances appear to move against their expectations. What gradually becomes clear, however, is that guidance does not always arrive through permission. Sometimes it arrives through prevention. A traveler standing at a crossroads may believe they need a map, while in reality they need a barrier blocking the wrong road. The closed path becomes part of the guidance. The obstacle becomes part of the mercy. The disappointment becomes part of the answer. Ibn Arabi viewed life as a continuous unfolding of divine knowledge, much of which remains hidden from immediate perception. Because of this, not every closure should be interpreted as rejection. Some closures are forms of protection that only reveal their meaning much later. There are people who look back upon events they once mourned and realize that those very events preserved them from difficulties they could not have foreseen. The heart often asks Allah to grant what it desires, but sincere prayer also places the matter in Allah's hands. Once the matter has been entrusted to Him, the response may take forms the person did not anticipate. The closing of a door may not be evidence that the prayer failed. It may be evidence that the prayer has entered a wisdom greater than personal preference. There is a subtle shift that begins occurring when this understanding settles into the soul. Instead of measuring every closure as a loss, the person begins asking a different question. Rather than focusing only on what was removed, they become curious about what is being redirected. They start recognizing that Allah's generosity is not limited to giving. Sometimes it appears through withholding. Sometimes it appears through interruption. Sometimes it appears through gently removing a path before attachment to that path becomes deeper. This does not mean every closed door should be celebrated immediately. Human beings still experience sadness when hopes collapse. They still feel confusion when plans unravel. Yet beneath those emotions, another possibility begins emerging. The possibility that Allah is arranging realities beyond the reach of current understanding. When certain doors close after prayer, it may not be because Allah is distant from your request. It may be because He is answering it from a perspective far wider than your own. What appears to be an ending may actually be the quiet beginning of a different road, one that cannot be seen until the previous road disappears from view. In this way, the closed door becomes more than an obstacle. It becomes a sign that the unseen response is already at work, shaping the journey according to a wisdom that extends beyond what the eyes can presently understand. When the heart suddenly knows what the mind cannot prove after sincere prayer, when nothing external has changed, yet a quiet certainty begins taking shape within a person. It is not a certainty produced by evidence. It is not built upon calculations, predictions, or guarantees. In fact, if someone were asked to explain why they feel this way, they might struggle to find the right words. The circumstances still appear uncertain. The future remains hidden. The questions that once troubled them have not all been answered. Yet somewhere beneath the movement of thought, the heart has begun resting upon a knowledge that the mind cannot fully explain. This experience can feel unusual because human beings are trained to trust what can be measured. They rely upon visible signs, logical conclusions, and tangible proof. The mind constantly seeks reasons before allowing itself to settle. It wants to know how something will happen, when it will happen, and what path will lead to the desired outcome. When those answers are unavailable, uncertainty naturally follows. Yet there are occasions when a person spends days, weeks, or even months asking Allah for guidance regarding a matter, and gradually a different kind of awareness begins emerging. It does not arrive as an argument. It does not force itself into attention. It settles gently into the heart like a truth that has always been present, but was previously hidden beneath noise and confusion. Ibn Arabi often distinguished between knowledge acquired through reasoning and knowledge received through unveiling. The first depends upon observation and analysis. The second arises when the heart becomes receptive to realities that cannot be reached through logic alone. This does not mean abandoning reason or ignoring wisdom. Rather, it acknowledges that not every truth arrives through intellectual effort. Some truths reveal themselves when the soul becomes aligned with something deeper than thought. After making dua, a person may find themselves unexpectedly drawn toward a particular direction. Nothing visible confirms that this direction is correct. Friends may not understand it. Circumstances may not support it. The mind continues presenting objections and possibilities. Yet despite all of this, the heart remains calm whenever it considers that path. Another path may appear attractive according to ordinary standards. It may offer advantages, comfort, or approval from others. Yet whenever the person contemplates it deeply, a heaviness emerges. The mind may be able to justify it, but the heart remains unsettled. This contrast reveals something important about inner life. The heart and the mind are not enemies. Both serve necessary functions, yet they perceive reality differently. The mind examines surfaces, patterns, and probabilities. The heart often responds to meanings hidden beneath appearances. When a person sincerely turns toward Allah through prayer, the heart becomes more sensitive to these deeper currents. There are situations in life where no amount of analysis can provide complete certainty. Human knowledge remains limited. Every decision contains unknowns. Every future possibility remains partially concealed. If certainty depended entirely upon evidence, many important journeys would never begin. A person would remain trapped in hesitation, waiting for guarantees that life cannot provide. This is why the heart sometimes receives reassurance before the intellect receives proof. Not because proof is unimportant, but because there are moments when divine guidance arrives through an inner clarity that precedes external confirmation. Ibn Arabi described the heart as a mirror capable of reflecting realities that remain invisible to ordinary perception. Like any mirror, its ability to reflect depends upon its condition. A restless heart reflects poorly. A distracted heart reflects inconsistently. A heart occupied entirely by fear, attachment, and noise struggles to perceive what lies beyond immediate appearances. Prayer gradually changes this condition. As the servant repeatedly turns toward Allah, the heart becomes quieter. It becomes less dominated by urgency and more receptive to subtle guidance. In this state, certain insights begin appearing with surprising simplicity. What once seemed complicated becomes clear. What once produced endless confusion begins settling into place. The remarkable thing is that this clarity often arrives without dramatic experiences. There is no voice speaking from the sky. There is no extraordinary event demanding attention. Instead, there is a growing sense that a particular truth belongs to you. It feels familiar before it feels explainable. Many people dismiss such experiences because they cannot present evidence for them. Yet when they look back years later, they often discover that these moments carried remarkable accuracy. The quiet certainty they could not justify eventually proved wiser than the fears and calculations that once dominated their thinking. This does not mean every feeling should be treated as guidance. Human emotions can be misleading, and desires can disguise themselves as certainty. Ibn Arabi repeatedly emphasized the importance of humility, self-awareness, and sincerity. Genuine insight does not inflate the ego. It does not create arrogance or impatience. Instead, it brings a sense of peace, balance, and trust. The knowledge that enters through the heart carries a different quality than ordinary opinion. It softens rather than hardens. It invites surrender rather than control. It creates steadiness rather than agitation. This is why certain people emerge from periods of intense prayer with a strange confidence they cannot fully explain. Their circumstances may still be unresolved. The answer they seek may not have appeared. Yet something within them has changed. The constant need for certainty begins loosening its grip. The heart has accepted what the mind continues trying to understand. When this happens, it can be a profound sign that the response to the dua is already unfolding. Allah has not necessarily revealed the outcome. He has not necessarily removed every obstacle. Instead, He has granted something that often arrives before visible answers. He has granted a heart capable of recognizing direction, even when proof remains incomplete. The person continues walking through uncertainty, but they are no longer lost within it. They continue facing questions, but they are no longer controlled by them. They move forward with a quiet trust that cannot be fully explained because it was not built upon evidence alone. In the language of Ibn Arabi, this is one of the subtle ways divine nearness manifests itself. The heart begins seeing what the mind cannot yet demonstrate. The soul receives a glimpse of what the eyes cannot yet witness. And within that hidden certainty lies a mercy that often appears long before the visible answer arrives. The strange rearrangement of people around your life. There are seasons that begin after sincere prayer when the answer does not first appear through opportunities, circumstances, or visible achievements. Instead, it begins appearing through people. Relationships that once seemed permanent begin changing their shape. Certain individuals become less present without any obvious conflict. Conversations that once happened naturally start becoming less frequent. At the same time, new people unexpectedly enter your life carrying perspectives, wisdom, encouragement, or lessons that seem strangely connected to the very prayer you have been making. These changes can feel unrelated. Human beings are accustomed to viewing relationships as separate from spiritual matters. They imagine that divine responses arrive through events, while friendships, encounters, and social connections belong to a different category altogether. Yet Ibn Arabi often described existence as a network of meanings woven together through divine wisdom. In such a reality, people are not merely companions passing through our lives. They are often part of the unfolding answer to questions we have not yet fully understood. After making dua, a person may notice that certain relationships begin requiring more effort than before. The connection remains, but something has changed. The conversation no longer nourishes the heart in the same way. Shared interests lose their importance. The person feels as though they are being gently moved in a different direction. This can create confusion because nothing dramatic has happened. No argument occurred, no clear reason appears, yet an invisible distance begins emerging. Encounters that once seemed unlikely start becoming significant. A brief conversation introduces an idea that remains in the mind for months. An unexpected friendship provides support during a critical period. A person appears at precisely the moment when their presence becomes meaningful. Looking back, these meetings often seem less accidental than they first appeared. Ibn Arabi understood that human beings are influenced not only by places and events, but also by the company they keep. Every relationship shapes perception in subtle ways. Every conversation contributes something to the inner world. Some people encourage deeper awareness. Others strengthen attachments that the soul may be trying to outgrow. Some bring clarity, others increase confusion. Because of this, changes in relationships can become part of a larger spiritual movement, unfolding beneath the surface of daily life. When a prayer is sincere, it does not simply seek a specific outcome. It opens a door through which divine wisdom begins interacting with the entire landscape of a person's life. This interaction may involve removing influences that no longer serve the soul's growth. It may involve introducing new influences that prepare the person for what lies ahead. The answer to the prayer begins shaping not only circumstances, but also the environment through which those circumstances will be experienced. There are moments when someone asks Allah for guidance, and shortly afterward, they find themselves surrounded by different conversations than before. Their attention is drawn toward people whose priorities reflect qualities they have been seeking within themselves. Without planning it, they begin spending less time in environments that leave them spiritually exhausted, and more time in environments that encourage reflection, sincerity, and growth. This process rarely happens through force. It unfolds gradually. The person may not even notice it while it is occurring. Only later, when looking back across months or years, do they recognize how dramatically their circle of influence changed after a period of intense prayer. What makes this experience particularly significant is that the rearrangement often occurs before the visible answer arrives. The person may still be waiting for the opportunity, the solution, or the breakthrough they requested. Yet around them, the supporting structure for that future answer is already being assembled. New relationships are forming. Old attachments are loosening. Different influences are taking root. These changes may seem random. From a deeper perspective, they may represent preparation. A gardener does not simply focus on the fruit. Attention is given to the soil, the water, the sunlight, and every condition necessary for healthy growth. In a similar way, Allah's response to a prayer may involve adjusting countless details beyond the immediate request itself. The people surrounding a person's life become part of that preparation. Ibn Arabi frequently emphasized that divine wisdom operates through means that are often hidden from immediate recognition. Human beings tend to focus on direct causes because those causes are easiest to see. Yet many of the most important developments in life begin quietly, through influences that appear insignificant at first. A single conversation alters a perspective. A new friendship introduces a different way of seeing. A departing relationship creates space for a necessary transformation. The heart often interprets these changes emotionally before it understands them spiritually. It may feel sadness when someone becomes distant. It may feel uncertain when familiar dynamics begin shifting. Yet with time, a broader picture emerges. The person begins recognizing how each movement contributed to a path they could not have anticipated. This does not mean every new person is sent specifically as a sign, nor does it mean every departing person should be viewed negatively. The deeper insight lies elsewhere. It lies in recognizing that the answer to a prayer may involve an entire rearrangement of influences, relationships, and connections. The response unfolds not only through what happens to you, but also through who walks beside you as it happens. A person becomes more attentive to the hidden wisdom within human encounters. They begin noticing that certain people appear precisely when particular lessons are needed. Others quietly step aside when their role has been completed. What once seemed random begins revealing a subtle order. The prayer continues moving through unseen dimensions, and part of its movement becomes visible through the changing landscape of relationships. New voices enter, old voices fade, different influences emerge. The soul gradually finds itself surrounded by exactly what it needs for the next stage of its journey. When this strange rearrangement begins unfolding, it may be more than coincidence. It may, one of quiet ways, Allah prepares the servant for an answer that has already begun long before it becomes visible in the world. The prayer is not only changing circumstances, it is also shaping the company, influences, and connections through which the future answer will eventually arrive. Why delays can be evidence of a greater response. There are few experiences that test the human heart more deeply than waiting after prayer. A person asks Allah with sincerity, hope, and trust. They turn toward Him repeatedly, carrying the same request through days, months, and sometimes even years. Yet the answer they expect does not appear within the time frame they imagined. The circumstances remain unchanged. The desired outcome remains distant. As the waiting continues, a difficult question begins forming within the heart. If the prayer has been heard, why has nothing happened yet? This question emerges because human beings naturally experience life through the measure of time. They evaluate progress through visible movement. When something important is desired, the heart begins creating expectations about how and when it should arrive. The longer the delay continues, the more difficult it becomes to separate trust from impatience. Yet Ibn Arabi viewed time differently from the way most people experience it. He taught that human beings stand inside a single moment while Allah sees the entire unfolding of existence. What appears delayed from the perspective of the servant may be perfectly timed within a wisdom that extends far beyond immediate perception. The person sees today's need. Allah sees the full journey of the soul, the unseen consequences of every event, and the hidden connections between things that appear unrelated. Because of this difference in perspective, what feels like postponement may actually be preparation. A child standing outside a locked door may believe the delay is caused by neglect. The parent standing on the other side understands that the room is still being prepared. The child measures the situation through desire. The parent measures it through readiness. There are prayers whose answers require conditions that do not yet exist. The heart may be ready to receive what it wants, but other parts of life may still need to align. Relationships may need to change. Circumstances may need to mature. Understanding may need to deepen. Certain lessons may need to be learned before the answer can arrive in a form that becomes a blessing rather than a burden. This is why some delays quietly transform the person who is waiting. The individual is focused almost entirely upon the outcome. Their attention remains fixed upon what they want Allah to provide. As time passes, however, something unexpected begins happening. The prayer itself starts changing shape. The relationship with Allah becomes deeper than the request. The conversation becomes more important than the outcome. What began as a desire for a specific answer gradually becomes a journey of spiritual refinement. Ibn Arabi often described the human being as someone continuously shaped by divine interaction. Every circumstance participates in this shaping process. Success shapes the soul. Difficulty shapes the soul. Fulfillment shapes the soul. Waiting shapes the soul as well. The waiting period is not an empty space between the prayer and the answer. It is part of the answer. Within that period, qualities emerge that would have remained hidden under different circumstances. Patience develops where impatience once lived. Dependence upon Allah deepens where dependence upon control once dominated. The heart begins learning how to trust what it cannot yet see. Many people assume that the greatest gift is receiving what they asked for. Yet there are moments in life when receiving something too early would have prevented the development of qualities that later become far more valuable than the thing itself. A person may ask for success while lacking the wisdom necessary to carry it. Another may ask for opportunity while still being governed by fear. Another may ask for change while remaining attached to habits that would undermine that change. The delay becomes a period of hidden construction. Something is being built within the person, even while nothing appears to be happening around them. From the outside, the situation seems unchanged. From the inside, an entire transformation may be unfolding. This is why certain prayers become more meaningful as time passes rather than less meaningful. The individual begins noticing subtle developments they previously ignored. They recognize how much their understanding has evolved. They see how different they have become from the person who first made the request. They realize that the waiting itself has been teaching them things that immediate fulfillment never could have taught. Ibn Arabi's vision of divine wisdom invites the believer to consider another possibility as well. Sometimes the delay exists because the answer being prepared is larger than the request itself. Human beings often pray from within the limits of what they can imagine. Allah responds from beyond those limits. The servant asks for relief from a specific difficulty. Allah may be arranging an entirely different future. The servant asks for one open door. Allah may be redirecting them toward a path they have not yet considered. The servant asks for something particular. Allah may be preparing something more suitable for the soul's long-term journey. Because the person cannot yet see that larger reality, the delay appears confusing. Only later do they discover that what seemed absent was actually unfolding in ways they could not recognize at the time. There is a profound difference between abandonment and preparation, yet from a limited perspective, they can appear remarkably similar. Both involve waiting, both involve uncertainty, both involve the absence of immediate results. The difference becomes visible only when the hidden purpose eventually reveals itself. Ibn Arabi encouraged attention not only to what is happening outwardly, but also to what is happening inwardly. If a prayer leads to greater awareness of Allah, deeper trust, increased sincerity, and a more refined heart, then something significant is already taking place even if the visible answer remains unseen. The delay is no longer merely a period of absence. It becomes evidence that divine wisdom is working at a depth beyond immediate observation. The person continues walking forward without possessing every answer, yet they gradually realize that waiting is not always a sign that nothing is happening. Sometimes waiting is the space in which the greater response is being assembled. Sometimes the unseen answer requires a larger canvas than the one the servant originally imagined. And when that answer finally arrives, many look back upon the years of waiting with entirely different eyes. What once seemed like silence reveals itself as careful preparation. What once felt like distance reveals itself as guidance. What once appeared delayed reveals itself as perfectly timed, according to a wisdom that never stopped working, even during the moments when it seemed hidden from view. The hidden signature of an accepted doer. Human beings often spend their lives searching for visible proof that their prayers have been accepted. They look for changed circumstances, fulfilled hopes, removed difficulties, and long-awaited opportunities. Because these things are easy to recognize, they naturally become the measures by which many people judge the fate of their supplications. If the desired outcome appears, they feel certain that their dua was accepted. If the answer remains unseen, they begin questioning whether their words ever reached beyond their own lips. Yet, Ibn Arabi approached prayer from a deeper perspective. He understood dua not merely as a request traveling from the servant to Allah, but as a sacred meeting between the finite and the infinite. In such a meeting, the greatest sign of acceptance is not always found in what changes around a person. Sometimes it is found in what begins changing within them. There is a subtle transformation that occasionally takes place after a period of sincere prayer. The person continues making dua, not because they have received everything they asked for, but because the act of turning toward Allah itself becomes precious. Something shifts in the relationship between the servant and the request. The desire remains, but it is no longer the only thing occupying the heart. A deeper awareness begins growing beneath it. Many people pray because they need something. Their attention remains focused upon the outcome. They seek relief from hardship, clarity during confusion, healing during pain, or guidance during uncertainty. There is nothing wrong with this. Human beings are created with needs, and prayer is one of the ways those needs are presented before Allah. Yet, as the journey continues, some discover that their prayers are gradually leading them somewhere unexpected. The heart becomes more attentive, the soul becomes more reflective, the awareness of Allah becomes more constant. The servant who originally approached prayer seeking a particular gift begins discovering the beauty of the giver. This transformation carries profound significance because it reflects a change in the center of attention. The prayer is no longer sustained only by desire. It is sustained by relationships. The person finds themselves returning to Allah repeatedly, not merely because they want something from Him, but because they have begun realizing that nearness to Him possesses a value beyond the fulfillment of any single request. Ibn Arabi often wrote about the difference between seeking gifts and seeking the source from which all gifts come. The first remains attached to outcomes. The second becomes attached to Allah Himself. When this shift begins occurring within the heart, it leaves behind a distinct mark. The individual notices that trust is slowly replacing anxiety. They notice that gratitude survives, even when circumstances remain incomplete. They notice that prayer has become a place of refuge rather than a negotiation. This is not resignation. It is not the abandonment of hope. The person still desires what they are asking for. They still continue making dua. Yet the condition of the heart becomes different. It is no longer trapped by urgency. It is no longer measuring divine mercy solely through immediate results. Instead, a deeper confidence begins emerging. The person starts recognizing Allah's care in places they previously overlooked. They notice guidance hidden within ordinary moments. They notice wisdom within delays. They notice protection within certain disappointments. They notice lessons within experiences they once considered meaningless. Life begins appearing less random because the heart has become more sensitive to the traces of divine wisdom moving beneath visible events. This sensitivity is often the hidden signature of an accepted dua, not because the answer has fully arrived, but because the prayer has already begun accomplishing something profound within the soul. The servant is becoming more awake, more aware, more receptive, more connected. There is another aspect of this hidden signature that Ibn Arabi's teachings illuminate beautifully. When a prayer is deeply sincere, it often changes the person's understanding of what they are truly seeking. At first, they may believe they need one specific thing. They discover that beneath the request lies a deeper longing. A person asks for provision, but discovers they were also seeking trust. A person asks for guidance, but discovers they were also seeking closeness. A person asks for relief, but discovers they were also learning surrender. The prayer gradually uncovers layers of the soul that remained hidden before the conversation with Allah began. This unfolding reveals something remarkable. The accepted dua is not merely the one that changes circumstances. It is also the one that reveals the heart to itself. It shows the servant aspects of their own condition they previously could not see. It exposes attachments, it deepens sincerity, it refines intention, it teaches reliance. The prayer becomes a path of transformation rather than merely a request for intervention. Many people imagine acceptance as a moment. Ibn Arabi's vision suggests something more expansive. Acceptance can be a process. It can begin long before the final outcome becomes visible. It can unfold quietly through changes in awareness, perception, and spiritual maturity. The answer may be moving toward the servant, while the servant is simultaneously being prepared for the answer. Both journeys happen together. The prayer ascends, the transformation descends, and somewhere between them, a hidden work is taking place. This is why the deepest sign of an accepted dua cannot always be photographed, measured, or displayed. It often exists in the invisible territory of the heart. It appears when the soul begins trusting Allah more than it trusts its fears. It appears when patience becomes easier than despair. It appears when gratitude survives uncertainty. It appears when the servant remains connected to Allah, even while standing inside unanswered questions. Such changes may seem small compared to dramatic miracles, yet they reveal something extraordinary. They reveal that the prayer has already touched a reality greater than circumstances alone. It has entered a relationship. It has opened a door between the servant and Allah that continues shaping the soul long after the words have been spoken. The hidden signature of an accepted dua is therefore not merely the arrival of what was requested. It is the quiet emergence of a heart that has been changed by its conversation with Allah. A heart that sees differently, trusts differently, and walks through life with a deeper awareness of the one who heard every word from the very beginning. Many people spend their lives waiting for proof that Allah has heard them, while overlooking the quiet changes already unfolding within them. Ibn Arabi taught that the deepest answers often arrive before the visible result. A prayer reaches beyond words. It reshapes the heart, redirects the path, and prepares the soul for what it once believed it was asking for. If some of these signs have appeared in your life, do not measure your dua by what has happened yet. Measure it by what is already changing within you. The unseen response of Allah is never absent. It is simply working at a depth that the eyes cannot always witness. What feels like waiting may actually be the beginning of an answer greater than the one you imagined.